So, Matt, we're on. This is podcast number 11. The exciting thing is we're doing YouTube live now. So, if you have comments, if you're coming in, type them for us. We'd love to chat with you and see how you're doing. But let's get started now. We've got lots of things to talk about. But first, how was your weekend?
You know what? It was just one of those weekends that was a little bit lazy on Saturday and winterized old Boris, the motorhome. So that was good to finally get that off my plate. But Sunday morning, I had a bit of a scare.
What happened?
Oh no, it was bad. I forgot I had to speak in church, and my alarm went off at 8:30, and it was in a different congregation than I normally go to, and they start at 9. And so when I looked at my watch, I was like, no! At 8:35 was when I looked, and I had prepared nothing. So
That is a scare.
it
We're
was
like
bad.
today we're talking about podcast
Hello,
things.
everybody.
Hello.
So I wrote my talk up on the stand.
Okay, right on, right on.
Yeah.
Well, mine was pretty cool. Went to Disneyland.
Oh,
Saw the
nice.
sunset in Laguna Beach. You can't really beat it. Life is good. But what's really cool is actually this weekend I'm going to the Grand Canyon. Have you heard of Havasupai Falls?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's really cool. About 8 months ago, we got permission from the Native Americans to cross over into their land and do the hike. And so we had to call their office and call them like a million times. We finally got a hold of someone, and so we're doing it. We're
Nice.
backpacking it. Yep, I'm getting my new backpack tomorrow in the mail, and I got a special, special sleeping bag that hopefully will go down to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. And
Did you
I'm
Amazon Prime that? Is that
absolutely, except for I'm too cheap for Amazon Prime. I don't know if I'm the only one out there that does this, but typically I'll wait 6 to 8 days for my Amazon stuff because I'm really, really cheap.
Yeah,
And
anything over 25 bucks is free shipping, isn't it?
yeah, you just have to wait for it. But this time I was like, shoot, I need it by this weekend, so I paid $20. But guess what? $20 is cheaper than the 119 or whatever Amazon Prime is. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. I got to tell you, although I do enjoy watching Amazon Prime, The Man
Yeah,
in the High
Castle.
Tower, Castle.
Castle.
Yeah.
Electric Dreams is a good one. It's a lot like Black Mirror. That one's pretty good.
Oh, I haven't checked that one out yet.
Yeah, it's a little bit dark, but a lot of
Yeah.
fun. Black Mirror is dark too.
Oh,
The other
yes.
cool thing that I noticed, have you noticed a lot of other companies are trying to compete with Amazon? For example, Walmart and Costco. So you can actually have Costco ship you basically anything in 2 days
Yes.
free because you're already paying the $55 to be a member. And so I have all my protein powders and all of my ridiculous things from Costco that I don't want to actually go to Costco and buy. I
Yeah.
just have to ship it and it's out at my doorstep in 2 days. And I don't have to battle with like 160-year-olds that are also there. You know what I
They're
mean?
there for their ice cream cones. I need
Yes.
my ice cream cone.
I want my 4.99 chicken that I crave for nightly.
You know what's funny? Every time I'm a big spender when I take everybody out for lunch at work. I'm like, let's go to Costco
Hot
for hot
dogs and
dogs.
protein.
And every time I go for hot dogs, I run into like some people that we grew up with.
Really?
Oh
Did
yeah,
you go to
all
the
the
one in
time.
Stewart Park or it's
Yeah,
like
yeah. So I ran into Milt LeBaron and Dan Butler eating their cheap ice creams, and every time I go, I run into somebody like that, like mom and dad's age, having a cheap ice cream or a cheap hot
see,
dog.
the baby boomers love Costco. I
Yeah,
don't care who you are, they're there. And by the way, Milt LeBaron, and for our podcast listeners, he has been a Costco fanatic since the 1980s when it
that's
opened.
true. That's
Yes.
true. Yeah,
He had a membership before regular people could get a membership. He
yeah.
had it, back when only small businesses and he was in the know.
Yeah, he's still there all the time, and everybody's like, "How do you know him?" I'm like, "He was my basketball coach, and I knew him from church." And like, they're like, "You know everybody in Sherwood Park." I'm like, "Just the people at Costco."
Well, now you can get your things shipped to your house. I'm afraid you can't get the $1.50 hot dog. Also, I'm really jealous that you get poutine at your Costco's in Canada.
Oh,
And
It
I'll
is
tell you
good.
what, the gravy there is the best poutine. Maybe Burger King's number two, um,
Oh,
but I like Burger King poutine.
I'll have to try Burger King poutine. I haven't
Yeah.
ever tried it.
Okay. Just
Once
don't go to
again, Costco
McDonald's.
poutine.
Although I like McDonald's fries, their
Yes.
gravy just is not good on their poutine.
No.
I'd say if I had to rate it, KFC's at the top, Costco's number two, and Burger King's number three.
KFC's gone downhill. They used to use the drippings from the chicken,
That's what I like.
but they don't do it anymore. That's unsanitary. It's dangerous. So now it's
Oh
like a powdered water.
no.
It's not the same, Dan. It's just not the same.
Okay, well, things have changed since I moved from Canada. Well, we have a great show ready for
Yes,
you
we do.
today. We're going to talk all about the new Apple event that's going on at the end of the week. We're also going to talk about different apps that are exposing people to fraud schemes. We've got new Samsung products we're going to talk about. And I just wanted to talk about the Google Play Store. I know we've brought it up before. Google Play has always been a little bit looser with their applications. So they allow their developers to submit things a lot easier than the Apple App Store does. Now, recently they've cracked down a little bit more on it, but I was reading an article this week about a new investigation that uncovered a sophisticated ad fraud scheme
Oh,
involving more than 125 Android apps and websites. Some of them were targeted at kids. So last April, this reporter received an email from somebody named Natalie Andrea, who said she worked for a company that purchases apps. She wanted to buy his Android app. And so this reporter had like an emoji switcher app. So right away, something felt a little bit off. He did a little bit of digging around because when he looked on the website, the company didn't even really exist. It was just a house address on the
mm,
Google Play Store. And then after that, it looked like it was based in Cyprus in Europe. So everything just seemed a little bit strange, and their phone number was British. So it was all over the place. Um, so then when he reached out and to BuzzFeed to investigate a little bit further, they found out they were actually ripping people off of millions of dollars with these 125 apps from the App Store, the Google Play App Store. So this is massive and this is huge. And there's a couple things about Google and Android that are a little bit different than Apple and the App Store. So for our podcast listeners, if you've got an Apple phone, when you download an app, typically Apple really looks into the company that's making these apps. They make sure that it runs well. I'm a game developer myself, and they had people playing my game for hours and taking screenshots before they even approved it for the App Store. Google Play, it's a little more overwhelming for them. They have more users. They're not quite as sophisticated. And so you can get away with releasing a lot of things easier on the Google Play Store. Not only that, but with Android, you can actually download Android apps from any website without it going through the Google Play Store. So that opens up vulnerabilities. Now, I
that's the
think this
most
is
sketchy way to get your apps is
yeah,
side loading is the term that it's called.
and Fortnite's kind of doing that, but they're a little more reputable.
Yeah.
But the thing about this is, they're going and they're attacking kids because they know that parents aren't really supervising their kids when they're on their phone.
Mhm.
A lot of parents, I see it all the time, they give their kids tablets, they give their kids phones, and they say, here, play with this. And unbeknownst to them, their kids are downloading these games off of the Google Play Store that look fun. And it turns out 125 of those games have malware that are actually racking up millions of dollars. And it's pretty clever. I was reading through how they did it. What they did was they kind of made it seem like the kids were looking at Google advertisements. So really, it looked like it was ripping off
Mm.
Google. This is just a warning out there that when you download apps, instead of just clicking on anything, make sure it's reputable. Make sure there's an app as well on the Apple App Store because that one's going to be well vetted. Watch out for.
Absolutely. So, how were they getting money? Were they just convincing kids to download other apps? Like, how did the malware collect money?
Yeah, it says here that for a significant portion of the millions of Android owners who downloaded these apps, they were secretly tracked as they scrolled and clicked inside the application. So by copying actual user behavior in the apps, the fraudsters were able to generate fake traffic that bypassed major fraud detective systems. So it sounds to me like it was just kind of showing advertisements for Google, probably seeming like they were the actual user, the actual patron of the game, when really it was fraudsters in the background. I think it was probably with advertisements with Google.
Interesting. Okay. So, Dan, you've got another one here that talks about Silicon Valley's dirty secret, and it looks like it's using contractors. They call it a shadow workforce. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what's going on there?
Well, this gets me really angry. I don't know what the
Yeah.
job situation is like in Canada, but I know here in the States, whenever you join a big company, instead of offering full time, we don't have free healthcare like you do. They
Yeah.
just offer contract work. And so they say, we'll give you 40 hours of contract work, but you're not going to be a full-time employee. What does that mean? That means you don't get a 401k. That means you don't get health insurance. It means you don't get vacation time. If you don't go to work, you simply don't get paid. And what's frustrating is now the big companies are doing it. This isn't just
Hmm.
mom and pop places that can't afford healthcare. This is Google. This is Amazon. This is Apple. This is huge companies that have tons of money that should hire people full time so that, if they get fired, they have a severance package, or if they have kids, they have a healthcare package. And people are saying yes to this because the unemployment rate has never been this low. And so lots of people are getting jobs, but these jobs aren't real jobs. They're contract work. It's gig economy work. It's side hustle work. And
Mm.
it's frustrating that they're working 40 plus hours and they're not getting a guarantee. I know personally when I started my job, that's how it was. I was a contract worker for the first 2 years. And when they finally switched me over to full time, you see benefits, and it's just such a relief. As well, if you're trying to buy a house, mortgage companies really want to see that you're full time and not a contract work, because it gives you a little more reputable with your money, anyways. And so I just thought it
Yep.
was frustrating that these huge places, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Uber, and other Silicon Valley tech titans, are just doing contract work. So they reached out to them and they said, "Why are you doing this?" And they revealed it was because they wanted to trim HR costs,
Mm.
which makes sense for their bottom line, but it's frustrating for tech workers.
It's fascinating because I started my career same as you on contract, straight out of university, and Canada actually changed our tax laws around being a numbered company or a limited company, and you actually have to prove that you have more than one customer. So, for example, if I was hired by Apple here in Canada, then I would have to show, if I was a contractor, that I had more than just Apple as a customer, or else I would be deemed an employee. And in,
Nice.
in fact, the Canadian government has gone after companies that have done this and said, by the way, Matt is an employee because you give him 40 hours a week and he has no other customers. And so now you owe the government your portion of the taxes that you normally would have paid if he had been an employee. So I know in the States you got FICA and SUDA, and different states have different benefits and taxes that the employer has to pay. And so it's the same in Canada. We have Canadian Pension Plan, CPP, we have employment insurance, EI, and the employer has to pay half. Now, if I was a contractor, I have to pay all those things myself. So I still have to pay into the Canadian pension plan. I still have to get my employment insurance, but my limited company or my numbered company would pay that portion for me. And then I would pay my own as well. So in Canada, it's interesting that since the crackdown, we've seen a lot less contract work. But when I started in oil and gas and heavy and industrial, just about everybody was a contractor. And some people really liked it because it normally meant you got about 20 to 25% more on your hourly rate. And with that, you could go out and purchase your own insurance, and you could put away your own retirement savings plan money. So is that different than what's happening in the US? Like if I went to go get a job with one of these companies in Silicon Valley, would they say, oh, your contract for $40 an hour, or you could be a permanent employee at $40 an hour? Or would they say contract, you get 45 or 50?
From this article, it seems to me that people are starting off with contract work. It makes it easy to fire someone. They don't have any protection.
True. Yeah.
And it's frustrating. And I think only the people that have been there for several years are now getting the full-time work. They may offer an olive branch to people that are very talented in the industry. But it seems to me that this is kind of the way it's going in the future. And, quite frankly, I think it's frustrating, especially because the companies are so rich.
Yeah.
I mean, they can afford it. And, they're really looking at their bottom line. And it seems like that's kind of the way of the future of the full-time employees out the door and the contract employee is in. So.
Well, you guys need to be like good old left-wing Canada up here and crack down on that.
All right.
Yeah.
We were talking last time about how remember how Europe was telling Google that they needed to start separating all of their applications from Android. That includes the Google Play Store. That includes the Google Suite of Office Suite. It includes even their Messenger chat, anything Google. Well, it turns out this week that it's been revealed that now Google is going to charge companies $40 a phone in Europe if they choose to use the Google Suite. And so that's kind of putting a price tag on it. Do you think $40 is fair?
Absolutely. They give away their software for free. So you can put Android on a phone for free. I mean, that's the whole reason why it's free, is so that Google can benefit from their apps being used. So yeah, absolutely. I don't think this was a surprise to anybody that Google was going to put a $40 price tag on it per phone. We all knew it was going to happen, and that's the exact reason why the EU actually wanted it this way. Now it's incentivizing Android phone makers, the hardware side of things, to actually create their own apps, very similar to what Samsung does. So for example, you get a Samsung phone, you'll have Samsung's email client, you'll have Samsung's browser. Those types of apps is exactly what the EU wants to see, is some competition and trying to break that monopoly that Google has over Android.
Here's kind of a cool thing though. They said that if you use Google search with Google Chrome on the phone, it'll be free. Then they won't charge the $40. So that's kind of a fun workaround.
Yeah, that is an interesting workaround. I had no idea they would do that.
Okay, so now everybody wants to talk about Apple announcing these new iPads and Macs in October. So this is going to happen October 30th. Remember, Matt, I bought this new MacBook Pro back in July, and I was really trying to hold out for the regular MacBook refresh.
Yes.
But, there were rumors, it's going to come out in August. Oh, no, just kidding. It's coming out in September. Well, the latest rumor is that the new MacBooks are going to come out in October, so October 30th. Which is exciting, and we might see a new MacBook Air, which is very long overdue for a refresh.
Very much
regular
so.
MacBook lineups. I don't think they're going to change anything about the Pro since that came out this summer. But these are very exciting things. So what does that mean? It's going to be faster processors. It's going to be faster graphics chips. Hopefully more hard drive space. That's kind of the rumors that I'm hearing now for the actual Macs, and battery life should remain consistent. Now, another cool thing is the new iPads that they're thinking about launching. Have you heard anything about the rumors there?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, that's what everybody was expecting to come out at the same time that they announced the new iPhones. And traditionally, they've done both the iPad and the iPhone at the same time. So I'm not sure why they pushed the iPad back. Maybe they're going to do something spectacular and they wanted to have just all the buzz about that once everybody went out and bought their new iPhone. Or maybe they just weren't ready. Or maybe the iMacs weren't quite ready. So I guess it all depends on how you look at it. We'll find out on the 30th. But these new iPads, they're supposed to have slimmer bezels. Hallelujah. I mean, all the other tablets out there have had slimmer bezels for a long time, but iPad just seems to be a little bit behind the times when it comes to that. And you've got a note here that they're going to have Face ID. I hadn't heard about that, so that means they're going to have those infrared dots go all over your face.
It'd
Does
be
that
pretty
mean
cool.
it's going to have a notch?
Yes.
No, not a notch on a tablet. That'd be terrible.
You never know.
No,
It'd be a
that'd be
bigger
so
screen
bad.
size, right?
And you know what's interesting about this announcement? It was actually just dropped like what, 3-4 days ago. So it
Mhm.
wasn't like they gave the tech world a whole bunch of notice. They just said, oh, by the way, in 2 weeks we're going to have an event. Well, remember a couple of weeks ago in our podcast, we talked about all the phones that are going to be released throughout the month of October.
Huge.
Well, October 30th was OnePlus's big reveal of the OnePlus 6T, which is one of the most look forward to phones that are coming out this year.
Mhm, mhm.
And now OnePlus is going,
This
Apple
was
now
our
has an
day.
event. Yeah, this was my day.
It's like when a bride is at her wedding and then the sister-in-law has a baby that same day. This is my day.
Yeah, this is my day. How dare you have a baby? Yeah, it's exactly like that.
Yeah.
So, anyways, they changed it to the 29th. And, they're a smaller company, but they did not want to share the limelight with Apple. Even though there's no new phones, everybody's going to be talking Apple, Apple, Apple for at least 3 or 4 days after the Apple event. So,
It was wise that
they
they put it on the 29th. Yeah.
yeah, they did. I thought that was interesting, and I totally agree with that move.
The only extra thing I want to say about this is if they do make the notch on the iPad, it's going to be another freaking resolution that I'll have to program into my game. Just a little rant I'm putting out there.
Blah.
Yeah, stop changing all the resolutions.
No notch on tablets, please. Please, no notches.
All right, so Samsung is announcing their Galaxy Book 2. This is a 2-in-1 Windows 10s hybrid with gigabit LTE and 20-hour battery life. So this is pretty cool. It's a lot like your laptop that you have, Matt. You have the Surface Pro, right?
I do, yep.
The only thing about this, and I was getting excited reading about it, but the frustrating thing about it is it actually comes with Windows 10s. So
Oh,
that's kind of a boiled down version of Windows that runs on certain chips. This isn't an Intel chip. This is going to run on the Snapdragon 850 chip, which, as you know, is kind of a mobile chip that's geared more towards cell phones. Very powerful chip, but you're just not going to be able to run normal applications. So what does Windows 10s means? It means that you can only download games from the Windows Store.
yep.
Now, there are a lot of programs on the Windows Store. Obviously, Microsoft Office is on the Windows Store, and that's very useful. Their web browser Edge is on there. Basically, it's if you gave this to mom or dad, they'd be happy. But if it's somebody that wants to run virtual reality, if it's somebody that wants to run Steam games, or if it's somebody that just wants to run legacy apps, maybe they've got an accounting app that, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
QuickBooks. I don't know if that's on the Windows 10 store. You're going to have to emulate it. So there is an emulator that you can get. You can actually technically run 32 Windows 32 apps. But emulation is always terrible. It's always slow, and you're not going to be
Mm-hmm.
gaming with that. You're not going to be loading up Fortnite or Tomb Raider or whatever it is that you play. Quake. It's gonna
Yep.
just be
Quake.
Quake, way too slow. Um, it's gonna start at about $1,000, which I thought was fair
Whoa.
because that's actually the same price as the iPhone 10s. It's very reasonably priced. And the cool thing about it is it has a beautiful screen. So it's a 12-inch. Um, AMOLED screen, and it's fully compatible with the Samsung S Pen stylus, which I know a lot of people like to do when they mark up PDFs. If they're, students in a class or if they're artists, a lot of people like to have that pen that's detachable, as well as a detachable keyboard and a very small bezel. They also said that the speakers are really great with Dolby Atmos, and it's got really great cameras too. So under the hood, they've got the Snapdragon 850 chip that comes with 4 GB of RAM, and the processor is almost 3 GHz, and there's 4 cores. So I mean, this is kind of a beast, but how frustrating that you can't run real Windows on it.
You know, for $1,000, that's my problem. For $1,000, just go get a Surface Pro. And
Is that how
then
much they cost?
yeah, they even start cheaper than that. So yeah, $1,000, go get a Surface Pro. You're gonna have a real laptop. You're gonna be able to run real applications without having to go to the Windows 10 store. And I gotta tell you, I've played around with Windows 10s, and it's a pretty good operating system, but I would prefer Chrome OS if I had to choose. So I think that was a mistake. I'd love to get a debate going down in the comments, or have listeners angrily defend Windows 10s. I would love
I don't think
to.
you're gonna find it. Who's gonna like that?
Yeah,
I don't want to run anything. I just want to run things on the Windows Store, said nobody ever.
said nobody ever. And it's even a stripped down version of Word. So it's not even the full version of Word that you can put.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, it's optimized for a tablet. So I noticed that they have a Samsung S Pen stylus. So that's great. It will be able to handle that. But you know what? So can a Surface Pro. So for that kind of money, I always have to compare it to the Surface Pro. And that is such a wonderful device at a great price point, and it just doesn't seem like it's worth it to me.
Now, your Surface Pro, you can use a stylus on it too, right? And it's got
Yeah,
a detachable keyboard, but it actually runs the full-blown Windows 32.
the whole shebang.
Yeah.
I used the pen, but really not that much. I used it more at the beginning just because it was a novelty. Oh, look, I can draw a little, like now you can see my doodles on my notes when I'm in a meeting, right? Like,
Perfect.
it is still pretty neat, and I've helped my kids with their homework by being able to draw stuff out, and it's fascinating on, like, especially OneNote on the Surface Pro, because I can handwrite and I can still search OneNote and it will search my handwritten notes and pull
Unbelievable.
things up. Yeah, it's pretty fantastic, but honestly, it's just faster to take that little tablet with the keyboard into a meeting and type on the keyboard than it is to scribble.
Oh yeah.
Um, just way faster. But in any case, I wish Samsung luck with this hybrid, but I think they really made a mistake when they went with Windows 10s.
I don't think you can even have the real Windows with these Qualcomm chips.
No.
They must be really good at battery life, because I mean this thing has 20 hours of battery life. I wonder if they threw in an Intel chip, if it just would be like 8 hours or 10, you know?
Sure, it would be the same as what you get in the Surface Pros, or in the MacBook Airs for that.
Now,
Um,
how many hours do you get on your Surface Pro?
I get about 8.
Okay.
Well, actually, that's the way it started, was 8, and it all depends on what apps you're running, of course. So if you're doing some heavy gaming, like if you're running Steam, you're not going to get 8. You might get 3 or 4. I've had a few apps really surprise me, like for some reason, Adobe PDFs can suck the battery life really fast. Sometimes even just web browsing, depending on what websites I've got in the background going on, they could drain my battery. So I usually get anywhere between 3 and 8 hours. I'd probably say average 5.
So this is actually a really big advantage if you think about it. I mean, this is like having a cell phone but a computer, and it lasts for 20 hours. I mean, you could do
Yeah.
that for a couple days and take it to work, type some notes. If you're not doing games, I mean, it could really be a good thing.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're an international traveler and you're going to be stuck on a plane that doesn't have an outlet to charge, or, you're going to be sitting in the back of a cab, who knows? That I think that's really what the sales on this would be. If you need a 20-hour battery, then by all means, this is exactly who should go out and buy it.
And you know, these days, most people just use web browsers anyways. I mean, I even do my taxes on a web browser. I don't
Yeah.
download anything, you know, it's
Yeah, me
pretty.
too.
So, so that's why Chromebooks are becoming so popular, especially in
Yeah.
the classroom. The great thing about stuff like that is there's not a lot of viruses for this stuff because it's new, you know. These
Good point.
operating systems haven't been around for a whole lot of time and it's just harder to break.